Tim Harris, it is hilarious to be a guy who runs a meditation app and he spends half the time telling people about breathing and the other half of the time telling people that we need to bomb as many children as humanly possible until Israel feels comfortable.
Yeah, I texted him. I said, it was Tim Dillon, the brilliant comedian,
He's the best.
Think about how Sam Harris is a meditation app. I didn't even know that. So by day, he's a meditation guru, and by night, he's encouraging carpet bombing of children.
Okay, I want everybody right now to breathe. What we need to do is indiscriminately bomb women and children. Manifest the reality you want to see. Do people from Gaza still live there? Absolutely not. Is there fire in it? Oh, it's a righteous fire and it burns bright. Be on a mountain right now with me. The night sky is lit up with stars and drone strikes. I want you to breathe with me and hear the screams. Understand it's necessary.
Believe it or not, that's true. Sam Harris does, in fact, have a meditation app. I don't know if I've ever used it, but I remember I used to listen to his podcast back when he had launched it. So it's been very successful. So yes, Tim Dillon is correct. In between his diatribes where he declares that Hamas must be flattened and anybody that gets in the way is the responsibility of Hamas, doesn't really matter. Just pick up your meditation app and you'll feel fine about the mass destruction that you're advocating on behalf of. It is remarkable, and I'm grateful that there are people like Tim Dillon out there that can be honest about this stuff. What I find most fascinating and what I think is really ties together some of the topics that I've been covering as of late, it really just requires rational, logical thought to come to the conclusions that you and I usually do. That's the primary reason that Jordan Peterson, James Lindsay, Konstantin Kisin, others have come out very aggressively with this label where either we're psychopaths or we're woke right or whatever. It's like, well, if you can't contend with our arguments, you better just smear us as something and hope that our audiences run the other direction. The problem being that your audiences are actually running the other direction because the logic of the claim that you're attempting to make is garbage. Also, we have the funny people on our side. We've got Tim Dillon, we've got Dave Smith, we've got Joe Rogan, we've got Theo Vaughn, we've got basically all of the top comics, more or less, and it doesn't end there. We don't just have the top comics, we also have the top political commentators, Dave Smith being one of them, and Tucker Carlson, who had on good friend of the show, Dave Smith, just a couple days ago. And it was nothing revelatory, but I did think that there was one interesting part of it, which I'm going to play for you now.
He was clearly saying that you guys on podcasts are simply not qualified to talk about these subjects. Now, you're saying this on the Joe Rogan Experience. Of all places to go and deliver this message, this is the place guaranteed to turn the entire audience against you. And of course, I just think that I think it's a ridiculous non-argument that never would have made sense. But coming off of the COVID years, the idea that you're going to convince people that you ought to kind of they ought to trust your opinions. They ought to, that your class ought to be trusted, was a ridiculous.
But he's not even in that class. I mean, he's not. I know Douglas, and I think that I've always gotten along with him, and I think that he's clever. But he's clever in a boarding school way. He went to boarding school, right, as I did, and you instantly recognize it in the way that he debates, which is by dropping references that suggest deep erudition that doesn't actually exist. I think he's clever. He's got a kind of bullshitty boarding school vibe to him, again, yes, that I recognize, that I have sometimes.
Right.
So I'm not, not trying to be holier than thou, but like the idea that he's an expert is absurd.
So Dave's obviously right about that. It was, as I said in my coverage right after the debate, it was just a terrible idea to try and argue that you have to be an expert to go on a podcast and make an argument against a war, for instance. Doing it on the Joe Rogan Experience, of all places, was a catastrophic misstep. This is why I came to the conclusion that ultimately Douglas was a mercenary. He was going in there doing the bidding of his donors, not so much of his own logical mind. He was doing it because of his pocketbook, not because of his, intelligence. He suffered the reputational hit as a consequence of that, but in the aftermath, he had a tweet put out from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, saying, everybody pick up my good friend Douglas's book. And as best I know, his book has become a top seller immediately as a consequence of that. So he got his payday, but he did take reputational damage as a consequence of that. I'm not the only one that feels that way. Here's what Tucker had to say. It's a very specific descriptor for what he expected to see transpire during that debate. I think that there's a reason Tucker's saying that. He may not be explicit about it, but I'll try and translate for you. And I'm sure most of you feel the same way about it. I think that Douglas Murray was employed to go in there and wreck Dave Smith, to destroy his argument, to destroy his narrative, because it has been very, very damaging to the pro-Israel side. And the fact that Tucker is willing to say that tells me that he knows that there are ideological mercenaries. There are paid spokespeople for the military-industrial complex or foreign countries or whatever you want to describe it as. But he's not really beating around the bush there. I mean, a kill shot. That's not, I think Douglas expected to go in there and just kind of mop the floor with you. That'd be an expectation of, I'm overly credentialed compared to the stand-up comic. He doesn't stand a chance against me. That's not what Tucker Carlson said. He said kill shot, as in, I'm going to ruin your career and I'm going to ruin your arguments against this war. And he didn't do that. Basically, the only people that came out of that debate thinking that he did that were the people that already agreed with him wholeheartedly. So why exactly is this such a 5-alarm fire?
The Middle East is filled with terrorists and terrorist regimes. Americans do not like Iran and the regime that runs it. They're terrorists. They keep threatening to destroy us and our friends, the Israelis. They're trying to get nuclear weapons and put them on intercontinental ballistic missiles. We reject it. I speak for tens of millions of red-blooded Americans. I speak for Christians and Jews and others alike. This is the view of the American people. That's number one. Americans hate Hamas.
This is the view of the American people. Imagine the audacity in saying something like that. I don't even think I ever attempt to speak for libertarians, much less all Americans. And he's going, this is the view of the American people. No, actually, it's not, Mark. But I'll let you wrap up.
We hate terrorists, butchers, Nazis. We hate men that kill babies, that decapitate babies, that rape women and burn people alive and attack young teenagers at festivals. We hate them. We despise them.
Yeah, we do hate people that kill babies, Mark. Unfortunately, there have been babies killed on both sides. And actually a lot more on one side than the other, which is kind of why I don't want to be funding any of it. I know this is really complex.
If only Israel would accept the Palestinian state as a condition of Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, if that's a condition, then who cares if they join the Abraham Accords? Accept a ceasefire with Qatar-funded Hamas, so Hamas, you see, can rebuild and strike Israel again. That's not going to happen, whether Qatar likes it or not. Accept the deal with Iran that does not fully dismantle their nuclear program. That better damn well not happen either.
So those 3 items that he lists there are all things that are happening right now, according to the latest reports on Trump's negotiations with Qatar, Iran, and Hamas. I don't think it's an accident that Mark Levin listed all of those things. That's pretty coincidental if so. But essentially, the reason that there's been such a uproar from Shapiro and Levin and others is that Trump appears to be negotiating without the Israelis present, that he is essentially going his own way. And this is something that I can't remember ever seeing an American president do, and I certainly can't remember an American president who took $100 million from the Adelsons, turning around and saying, you guys are actually an impediment to peace. You're preventing me from accomplishing the things that I think that I can. And Trump is going all in. And I may have mud on my face 72 hours from now. But as of now, Trump appears to be sincerely cutting the Israelis out because he has realized that they are in fact not helping him. They are a hindrance to getting a peace process done on all of these fronts. The pundits that you would expect to be panicking are panicking. I'll play you the speech in just a sec. Before I do, let's hear from Glenn Greenwald as to whether or not we should actually fear Iran.
20 years that we have heard over and over everything about Iran that Professor Dershowitz is trying to scare you into believing that they're just about to get nuclear weapons, they're weeks away, they're months away, we have to go bomb them. This is not something that only began recently. In fact, we've been hearing this exact same thing for 20 years and none of it ever came true. So you should decide tonight whether there's any reason after hearing this for 20 years, you're now suddenly willing to believe that Iran is on the verge of getting nuclear weapons to the point that we have to go start a new war with Iran. Jeffrey Goldberg, who's the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic and a strong supporter of Israel, wrote a cover story for The Atlantic called The Point of No Return in 2010, where he told Americans it was more than 50% likely that the Israelis were about to go bomb Iran in the next 3 months because they didn't have more than months before Iran finally acquired a nuclear weapon. You can go all the way back to 2005, where NBC News reported the following. This is 2005, 20 years ago, quote, Israel should take, quote, bold and courageous action against arch-foe Iran's nuclear program. The New York Times in 2012, President Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel told the UN that Iran's capability to enrich uranium must be stopped before next spring or early summer, arguing that by the time the country will be in a position to make a short, undetectable sprint to manufacture nuclear weapons. Reuters in 2015, CBS in 2018, BBC in 2019, all say exactly the same thing. Oh, we're only months away. We have for sure these intelligence photos with a big red arrow pointing at some random building that we have discovered is where Iran is about to proliferate their nuclear weapons. It's been happening over and over that you've been lied to for 20 years. Why would you suddenly believe it and support a new war against a country that's 3 times as large as Iraq, risking all of the major escalation and instability and huge war that we know will happen?
That's a fantastic question, Mr. Greenwald. Why should we believe it this time? Well, just to prove to you that this is happening yet again, let's listen to Fox News, as the dutiful propagandists that they are.
Satellite images revealing the location of a previously unknown Iranian nuclear site. Now, the facility spans nearly 2,500 acres. And this is a big discovery. Jillian Turner has more from the State Department. Good morning, Jillian.
Pretty explosive, Dana. These satellite images that we have obtained exclusively show the alleged site location and even the layout of the secret, previously unknown nuclear weapons facilities inside Iran. This, of course, raises fresh concerns about the regime's role in these ongoing nuclear talks with the Trump administration. The National Council of Resistance of Iran has collected intelligence from sources on the ground inside Iran that locate this nuclear weapons facility in what is called Semnan province, far from the regime's already known nuclear sites. It's codenamed the Rainbow Site by Iran's officials, and it spans nearly 2,500 acres. It's been operating, as far as we can discern, for over a decade under the cover of a chemical production company that's called Diba Energy Siba.
Oh, it's a rainbow site. Perhaps there's a pot of gold at the end of it. I mean, that's what you'd have to believe. On top of that, it's 2,500 acres, and you've just discovered it, and it's been functioning for over a decade, despite there being inspectors that have been allowed in many years during that period. Really? Really? We're going to buy that? Well, I'm not. Look, I think there's a distinct possibility that the Iranians want nuclear weapons. Why wouldn't they? It's like North Korea. As soon as they got them, the threat of being overthrown or invaded diminished significantly. After Gaddafi gave up his nuclear ambitions, he was then taken into the streets and brutalized. So, yeah, trying to negotiate the Iranian leadership into not wanting nuclear weapons is going to be a major challenge. And they're going to have to believe that an invasion and toppling is imminent if they proceed. So I guess that's the argument here, but it doesn't seem as if Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and others are just looking for there to be peace. It looks as if they would like there to be an invasion and a toppling and a forceful overthrow. Fortunately for us, as of now, it appears that Donald Trump does not want that. And more importantly than Donald Trump even, his base really, really doesn't want that. They have seen the death and destruction and waste of the entire war on terror, and they're not interested in doing it again. And just to give you an example, here's one of my buddies talking about it. Owen Schroyer from InfoWars.
Ones that actually have individuals as guests on their programs who are Holocaust deniers, who are terrorist deniers, who trash our country.
Yeah, he's getting desperate
trash
now.
Our military.
Listen how desperate he is. Trash our military?
No.
You would gladly send every American soldier to die for Israel, Mark. Don't you say a damn thing about our military. Don't you say a damn thing.
These are people that history will deal with in a very, very harsh way.
Oh.
But history comes too late.
We'll see about
with
that.
A regime that wants a nuclear weapon.
Who's he even talking
wants
about?
The
back to Iran.
Intercontinental. I stress, intercontinental.
Notice how he's like, oh, the people that have on their show.
Who has people on their show? Name the show host, Mark.
The Holocaust deniers and the terrorist deniers.
Who, Mark? Say a name, you coward. And then it's back to Iran.
He's obviously talking about either. There's only two options. It's either Tucker Carlson or it's Joe Rogan, or both. That's who he's talking about.
If I wasn't Jewish, if I was Christian, or a Muslim, or Buddhist, or Hindu, or an atheist, or an agnostic, or deist, or whatever, my view would be exactly the same.
Bullshit! Bullshit! You do not speak for Christians, conservatives, Mark. Bullshit! You are not going to sit there and say, as a Jew, I'll speak for Christians and say the same thing. No, you won't.
I genuinely believe that Owen Schroyer, Dave Smith, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan are far more indicative of the average American voter, average American right-winger, and probably just the average American than Ben Shapiro or Mark Levin when they're advocating for this war with Iran. I think it's tremendously unpopular. Yes, I think that if you were to just poll Americans and say, do you want the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon? I think most people would say, no, I'd rather they not. However, if the poll was then followed up with, if the only way to stop it is to invade them, I think that the answer would be, all right, never mind. We're not doing that. We're not going back into the Middle East. No more boots on the ground. No more M4s. No more bombing campaigns. We're not interested. And I think that is the reason that there has been this push for this label of woke right, is that it's really hard to defeat us on the merits of the arguments. Because if we actually get a fair hearing and we sit across from you for 3 hours, you can't hold a candle to us because we have the truth on our side. And we also have the populist energy on our side, which says, no more wars in the Middle East. In fact, how about no more wars for, give me fucking 5 years. That's all I'm asking. Not asking for a lifetime. 5 years of no wars. Can we get that? All right. There's my compromise position. Give me 5 fucking years of peace and prosperity. Let's try that. Let's try it for a change. Let's just try it on like a new pair of shoes. Just see how they feel. Let's go for a dance in them. Let's go for a walk. That's what I'm interested in seeing. And I think most Americans agree with that. Most. Now, that's not to say that most Americans can't be easily propagandized into another war. God knows they can. And God knows they probably will be in the not too distant future. But as of now, the populist energy says no war, and the President of the United States is lambasting the neoconservative movement. Let's hear from him just yesterday in Saudi Arabia.
This great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spend trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly.
What are you talking about, Trump? We'll be greeted as liberators. Remember that one? Yeah, it didn't work out so hot, did it? And it wouldn't work out so hot if we were to invade or even bomb Iran, for that matter, because we've got a lot of bases over there, and Iran would almost certainly respond and blow up and kill and maim countless American troops that are unnecessarily stationed in the Middle East right now. So there really is no war option that amounts to something that I or Trump, I think, wants to see. And that is really fucking good news. That is a breath of fresh air if ever there was one. And I, for one, am very grateful for it. Now, as I said before, does that mean that Trump will follow through? Does that mean that he will sign peace deals with everybody involved? No, it doesn't. But the trajectory right now looks really promising. And I think that this is the time where the non-interventionist libertarians ought to be lending their support in hopes that whatever little influence we may have might help get it pushed over the finish line. And I think we got a real shot. And I did not think we had a real shot just a few weeks ago. This is a tremendous shift. And it's looking, I mean, optimistic puts it mildly. There were rumors just a few days ago that Donald Trump was prepared to unilaterally recognize Palestinian statehood. What? I mean, talk about a 180 from what I expected to happen with that. That would be crazy. On top of that, you now have genuine progress. Just a few hours ago, it was announced that the Iranians are prepared to sign a nuclear deproliferation or nuclear freeze. And all that they're asking for is to bring down the sanctions, to take off the sanctions. Donald Trump just announced earlier this morning that, in fact, he would be lifting the sanctions against Syria. Now, this one I'm of two minds on, because Al-Jilani, former AQIAP or whatever, Al-Qaeda guy, is now the president, and he's meeting with Macron, and I guess he's going to meet with Trump. Very tough guy, very beautiful guy. I don't know how to feel about that, but I will say this. The Syrian people have suffered terribly for a very long time. In large part, thanks to Operation Timber Sycamore and CIA behavior that was basically forcing this civil war to transpire. But setting that aside, I think that the sanctions ultimately punish the people. Therefore, I would like to give peace a chance, even if I think Al-Jilani is probably going to end up being a disaster. But you never know. I mean, compared to Assad, we'll see. We'll see who ends up being better. Those aren't the only peace negotiations that are transpiring. Eden Alexander, the last, as far as I know, the last American Israeli, he's both, hostage in Gaza was released. Once again, Witkoff comes through. I don't know how the fuck this guy keeps pulling it off, but allegedly, they didn't even have to give up anything. And he got another 20 hostages released and the final American citizen released. That is huge, huge progress. And to do it without giving anything up, obviously, it was framed as, hey, give us this and you'll have a lot of goodwill. But I think more than that, what it's really doing is it's taking the impetus and the justification for America to be involved any longer off the table. There are no Americans over there anymore. That used to be the argument. They used to say, well, they've got hostages, so we have to keep bombing until we get the hostages back. The war can't end until we get the hostages back. And then you go, well, I don't really care about the hostages. They're not Americans. Oh, well, there are some American hostages. Well, now there aren't. It's totally your problem now, not ours. So that's a huge step in the right direction. And I think the reason that they negotiated that, and I think that the reason that Hamas did it, is because they realized that as long as America is funding and arming the Israelis, this war ain't going to end. And it's certainly not going to win. It's not going to end with them victorious. So they're like, here, take your American hostage. You no longer have an excuse to be involved in this thing. So I think that's what's happening. But that's not all. He's also simultaneously negotiating with Putin. So he's negotiating with Hamas, Iran, and Russia all at the same time. As of now, positive outcomes being promised. Remarkable. Just to show you, I'm not making this up. Here's a spokesman for the Israelis on Sky News.
Tell me where this is wrong. Did the Americans have any involvement in the release of this? The Israelis have any involvement in the release of this hostage? Have the Israelis had any involvement in the deal with the Houthis that the Americans have done? Are the Israelis talking to Iran at the moment? Were my questions. Where am I wrong on that? Please tell me, because it'll be interesting to know.
We are closer than ever with our American allies. What you're sharing is a view which Israel's enemies would like to share it to the outside world. It's not just wrong, it's morally backwards. Let's not confuse the arsonist with the firefighter. We're fighting to defeat Hamas in this war.
Now, if you notice there, he didn't say no. He did not say no. He said it's wrong. It's morally wrong. Let's not mix the arsonists with the people trying to put out the fire. It seems to be what's actually happening. Now, you could say there's some 5D chess thing that's happening. I don't know. Maybe there is. But as of now, it looks as if Trump is genuinely pissed off. And I think I know why.
No meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Analysts have been saying recently that he is being seen by the U.S., by the Trump administration, as a roadblock on many areas that Trump is trying to advance. Israel, in fact, was not having much to do with this latest hostage development.
But needless to say, when you have Fox News that's saying that the Trump administration perceives Netanyahu as a roadblock, that's a big deal. Now, why? Why are they so upset? Well, in my opinion, Signalgate, if you guys remember that from a month ago, it appears more and more likely that Israel was using Mike Waltz to backchannel and betray the anti-war members of the Trump administration. Instead of going after Waltz, who ought to be responsible because he was the one who added in the journo into the chat, they went after Hegseth. Everybody went after Hegseth, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. Why? Well, it happens to me that Waltz was one of the top guys advocating to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran, along with Rubio, and Hegseth was opposed to it. So all of a sudden, this chat leak makes Hegseth apparently on the chopping block, whereas Waltz is fine. But that's not how it played out. The media pressure was all Hegseth, get him out, get him out, get him out. But how did Trump respond? He forced out Waltz as the national security advisor and sent him to the United Nations, the same place that he sent Nikki Haley during his first presidential administration, if you recall. So it seems to me like Trump uses the United Nations station to get rid of malcontents. He just ships, he's like, get out of here. Don't want to deal with you. I'm going to read a synopsis for you from another one of my buddies, Harrison Smith, also of InfoWars. It says, let me get this straight. Israel bombed the shit out of everyone around them for over a year, which eliminated Iran's proxies, but pissed off everyone in the world. So now they have a brief window of opportunity to take out Iran, and if they don't, the backlash will be massive. But they can't actually defeat Iran without American troops on the ground, so they are frantically trying to get Trump to launch a war. With Netanyahu visiting D.C. 3 times in 3 months with nothing to show for it, but a bombing campaign against the Houthis, despite being seemingly surrounded by militant Zionists, Trump's team has mostly pursued diplomatic solutions, even talking to Iran against the explicit wishes of Israel. A rift formed between pro-interventionists, he says interventionists too. It's pro-interventionists, damn it, you and Trump got it wrong, like Mike Waltz and anti-interventionists like Pete Hegseth. Hegseth then started facing immense media pressure with his top anti-war aides being forced out of the Pentagon on flimsy accusations of leaking, some of which went on to be guests on Tucker Carlson, which you should check out. Then Waltz added the editor of the leftist magazine The Atlantic to a Signal chat, that's Goldberg, where the Yemen war was being discussed. After the chats were leaked, Hegseth got the brunt of the blowback for some reason, and when he refused to resign over it, a second Signalgate scandal was launched to accuse him of sharing classified info to his wife. Waltz, meantime, appointed a former member of Israel's Ministry of Defense to oversee Iran and Israel policy on the NSC, that's the National Security Council. Eventually, Waltz was forced to resign after he was discovered coordinating with Netanyahu to push a pro-war agenda in secret and against the orders of Trump. Then, in the last few days, Trump cut off communication with Netanyahu, dropped the requirement for Saudi Arabia to normalize relations with Israel, canceled Hegseth's trip to Israel, and even announced that the U.S. is going to recognize a Palestinian state. Suddenly, it's been announced that multiple gigantic advanced nuclear production facilities have not only been discovered in Iran, but are known to be using material only used in nuclear weapons, not energy production. And Trump leaves for the Mideast on Monday. Hoo boy. Nailed it. Nailed it, Harrison. He and I saw that identically. So I just wanted to read the recap because it helps get some of the details in there that I probably would have left on the cutting room floor if I'm just ad-libbing. But That's the whole thing. That's the whole picture. Now, as I said many times already in this episode, all of this could fall apart. We could end up being in war with Iran in a week. But as of now, it sure doesn't look like it. It looks like Trump is for real negotiating to basically align the United States with the Saudis and with the Middle East instead of the Israelis, our top Middle Eastern ally. Seems as if they're being replaced. And what I think is really interesting about this is that China had actually brokered the peace talks between Saudi Arabia and Iran just a couple years ago. And now it looks like Trump has decided, hey, and this is my read of it, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think that because the Saudis trading in the US dollar and the petrodollar system is predicated off of that continuation, I think that Trump and his economic advisors, more than anything, said, we need to get right with the Saudis. If that means we have to abandon our relationship with the Israelis, so be it, because we have to have a positive relationship with the Saudis. And if the Saudis get in bed with the Chinese, well, then we're fucked. So priority number one is to assuage the Saudis. You don't have to like it. I'm not saying I like it either, but that's what it looks like to me. So much so that Qatar, who's allies with the Saudis, I imagine, is offering to give a new Air Force One to the Trump administration. Well, not to the United States federal government. And it looks as if everybody is trying to buddy with the U.S., and it looks as if we are swapping allies in the Middle East, something I never thought I'd see. Never. I mean, to abandon the Israelis and go towards the Islamists is mind-blowing. Now, Mark Levin makes some good points, actually, despite the fact that I despise him. It is true that the Saudis were involved, and most of the hijackers on 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia. So I'm not saying that this allyship will be any more fruitful or one that I should be any more optimistic about than it is the one with the Israelis. It could lead to other wars on behalf of Saudi Arabia if they go all the way that direction. That's a distinct possibility. But I still think that it's preferable than what looked to be an imminent war with Iran, one that, in my opinion, would be the death knell for the United States empire as it exists today, and probably the death of the dollar. It gives us a chance at peace, at least. It gives us a chance at peaceful relationships with the Middle East, which God knows we need, and more than we need it, they do. Holy shit, they've been through hell. So, fingers crossed. TBD. Here's another good reason we shouldn't want war with Iran.
I give Muslim countries credit. They punch above their weight class. Every day they go, what the f*** is you? What are you looking at, motherfucker? Palestine went dumb on them, dude. Palestine.
They really are crazy.
I was like, what the f*** are you going to do, dude?
You are right. Yeah, Pakistan. Who was gassing Pakistan? I was like, no, dude. You
That's because they said, I will die for Pakistan. Pakistan's day one. Dude, you taught that. And they got nukes. They both have nukes. So both of them are going, dude, we can do it right now.
I don't know why. I feel like Pakistan gets their nukes from where like the coyote gets them from.
For sure.
I feel like
They have Acme's. They have Acme's.
Obviously, just a comedic interlude there, but that's Matt and Shane Gillis from Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast. But yeah, there is a hot war between nuclear powers right now in India and Pakistan. And yeah, the Islamic world don't play. What the fuck are you looking at? They're pretty serious, man. So I'd like to not. Could we not? Let's not. 37 trillion in debt. We've already got so much civil strife and cultural degradation here. No thanks. And might I add, we were just funding a proxy war against another nuclear power in Russia. So yeah. And I forgot. There's so much good shit happening. I forgot that Trump was also negotiating and did with the Houthis in Yemen and basically ended that bombing campaign. And that's over now. Phenomenal.
Ben Shapiro built a career opposing identity politics as a proud Zionist.
Yeah.
Now you listen, feel however you feel about Zionism. It's identity politics. Like that is the definition of identity. You could not find a better example of a politics built on an identity. And yet you're out here saying facts don't care about your feelings. identity politics is wrong. And then while you're saying that, your number one priority is this manifestation of identity politics. You can only keep that charade going for so long.
No, it's totally true.
Before someone sees through it.
There's something in people that the lowest part of people that instinctively accuses others of doing what they're doing. And I've never really, that's one thing I don't want to be, is a guy who does that. But I remember Bill Kristol, who I worked for years and really liked and was grateful to, and he was a great boss in the 90s, and came out against me and called me a Nazi and all this stuff, like without calling me. By the way, I called him and asked him to lunch. He refused. He wouldn't go to lunch with me. End of our relationship. But one of the criticisms against me, I'll never forget it, when I realized this phenomenon was real, was when he accused me of advocating, and I'm quoting, for an ethno-state. Now, I have a lot of flaws. They're all on display. I've never wanted an ethno-state. And I was like, wait, one of us is for an ethno-state, and it's not me.
I think that's a really profound point and a very obvious one. That if you believe in a Jewish state, well, then definitionally you believe and support identity politics. Now, you can say, oh, well, we have to have ours because of the injustice and persecution that we've suffered. Okay, but just acknowledge that's the exact same argument that African Americans have made when it came to reparations. That, sure, this is unfortunate, but call it whatever you want. The injustice waged against us historically justifies the identity politics with which we function today. It's the exact same argument. And it is definitionally woke, which is exactly why they tried to front run it and call us the woke right. Because the actual woke right are the people that stand with the ethno-state in the Middle East, known as Israel. Not an accident. Not an accident that they started to call us woke right, just because it was coming for them eventually. So might as well mirror that on your opponents before they can deliver the blow against you. What's funny about it is that I never even considered saying that, because it was just such a given that the pro-Israel Zionist right wing were the wokeists. Obviously. I never felt like it was necessary to smear my opponents on the right, primarily because I don't really view myself as being on the right, even though I probably am at this point. But also because I felt like the merits of my arguments would stand up without any bullshit labels. If I called them anything, I called them neoconservatives because that's what they called themselves. But apparently that also isn't allowed anymore, as we discovered from Douglas Murray.
Douglas Murray wrote the book called Neoconservatism, Why We Need It. It was his book. And so what happened was, for people who don't know a lot about this, this was their term. The neoconservative was not a pejorative term until the neoconservatives got control of our foreign policy and ruined everything.
Yeah, neoconservatism wasn't a pejorative until neoconservatism was tried and failed miserably. And we got to see it firsthand and suffer the consequences of it. And now we use it as a pejorative against you because your ideology fucking sucks. And I make no apologies for saying that. But what you notice about this is that it wasn't just neoconservative, it was also Wolfowitz. When Dave Smith brought up Wolfowitz, that's when Douglas Murray said, oh, bring up a Jewish name. The N-word. It's just so obvious what they're doing. So they're trying to take away the labels that we can use against them, which are totally apt. If you can't call a guy who wrote Neoconservatism, Why We Need It, if you can't call him a neocon, well, then you fucking can't call anybody that. But also, once they've already tried to strip away the use of the N-word, they also tried to apply a label which is so much more aptly applied to them, the woke right, and they tried to apply it to us, which is mind-blowing. But it's only mind-blowing if you don't understand the incentive structure, if you don't understand the tactical play here, which I know you guys now do, because I've laid it out in excruciating detail over the past month. Couldn't be more obvious. They were attempting to defang the populist, non-interventionist right-wing movement that was on the upturn and try and crush it in its infancy. Well, you failed. And as a consequence of that, James Lindsay, who, as far as I'm concerned, was deployed to employ this tactic, has now lost his mind as a consequence of it. And I genuinely believe that. First up, you have someone saying, apparently the new pope said, communism has penetrated even Christian circles disguised as solidarity. It is our pastoral duty to expose it. Dr. Taylor Marshall responds, let us stand in full agreement with His Holiness Pope Leo XIV on this point. And then James Lindsay quote tweets it and says, no, you don't. If you did, I'd be your leader instead of kicked to the curb. Stupid fascist. You're not anti-communist. You're communist one step removed. And given how the PRC runs, that's China, 0 steps today. So basically he's saying, you are communist. You're not anti-communist. You are communist. But it gets better. He also posted one of the worst memes I've ever seen. Says, there's no such thing as the woke right. Then he says, these are all tweets from other people, but he put it together. Then Michael McConnell says, better a woke right than a weak right. Then Cernovich says, Marx is an excellent writer and the critical theorists have made excellent points about capitalism and its excesses. Then Matt Walsh says, oh no, maybe I am woke right after all. And then a guy literally known as Literal Schizo says, it's inevitable and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Everyone will fall in line eventually when we, the woke right, take control of the right wing. This is where it gets totally nuts. So this Matt Walsh tweet in particular, he says, oh no, maybe I am woke right after all. Let me show you the context of that. Matt Walsh said a couple of years ago, he said, what people don't seem to understand is that Arby's is actually the best fast food. So obviously he's a big fan of Arby's. Arby's posts a tweet that says, unlike Dad, our ham and Swiss actually came back, which is just a stupid joke, but whatever. James Lindsay quote tweets an Arby's advertisement, and he says, Arby's, trying to appeal to the woke right demo. That's curtains for them. Cringe as fuck. And Matt Walsh quote tweets that with the screenshots, and he says, oh no, maybe I am woke right after all. So he's obviously making a joke. But does that stop James Lindsay from using it in his own meme to try and prove out that his thesis is in fact valid? No, it does not stop him. So it's very obvious to me that James Lindsay felt as if he should have been the leader of the right wing, which is fucking mind-blowing because he was a lefty his entire life. He was a college professor, for God's sake. So you basically change your mind, you swing over to the right just during the last election, and you think that you should be the ideological leader of an entire movement? What? So there's a mixture of op being ran paired with massive narcissism and ego, astronomical ego. But he has opted to go to war with all of the people that are actual ideological leaders of the right wing, like Cernovich, like Posobiec, like Sargon of Akkad, everybody. He's even gone to war with me, for God's sakes. And I'm far from a leader of it, but it's just wild. He's also takes shots at Dave Smith constantly. But the reason I know that it's not just that he wants to be the leader of the right, but it's specifically targeted at the non-interventionist right wing, is that he goes after Dave and I. That's not an accident in my view. Now, certainly we have decent followings, and maybe you could perceive us as being some level of leadership on the right, but I think that specifically the reason that he's gone after us is because we have really good arguments against the wars in the Middle East and really, really good arguments against neoconservatism writ large. So you might as well just put a tiny little bow around everybody from Nick Fuentes all the way to Dave Smith. Might as well just get everybody that disagrees with you on anything and call them all woke right. Unfortunately for you, Mr. Lindsay, is that showed your hand. It showed that you are not just concerned about identitarianism, because if that's all you were concerned with, you certainly wouldn't have wrapped into this descriptor a Jewish guy who's a non-interventionist, who is not identitarian, and does not want there to be any sort of white nationalism. Dave Smith, specifically who I'm talking about, you tried to label him that as well. Oops. So now everybody sees what's happening. Here's the sad thing. I think, and I mean this sincerely, and I feel bad for James, honestly, because I liked some of his work when he was kind of explaining the ideology behind the woke left. I found it educational, but I got to be honest. Now it's making me feel like, if you've ever heard of the Gell-Mann amnesia effect, it's this phenomenon where when you're reading a news article about a subject that you're an expert on, like I'll give you an example. Whenever I read a news publication or coverage from a news channel even about lending, mortgage rates, financing, debt, the banking system, any of that, that's like my area of expertise. I can immediately identify all of the biases of the author and all of the flaws in the argument that they make. But then I go over to some other subject I'm not an expert on, and I go, well, this is probably true, though. That's the amnesia aspect of the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. I'm now applying that same lesson to James Lindsay. I'm thinking to myself, well, he still had good points on the woke left stuff. Well, maybe he fucking didn't. Maybe he was wrong about that, too. And that just wasn't my area of expertise, and therefore I took him more seriously than I should have. Now, I'm not saying that's true. I don't know. I'd have to do way more research into Marxism to actually understand if he was bullshitting me on that too. But I'll tell you one thing I know for a fucking fact. As soon as he started to go after the non-interventionist, populist right-wingers, libertarians like me, I knew for a fact that this guy was not a honest operator. And as far as I'm concerned, as soon as I identify that in your character structure at all, you are dismissed, good sir. You are dismissed from my good graces, and you are dismissed from me taking you seriously moving forward unless you make amends for that misstep. And it seems at this junction as if he has no interest in making amends for that misstep. And that's fine. It's his life to lead. I don't give a shit. He's obliterating his own career, his own reputation as a consequence of this incredibly misguided decision. But that's his choice to make. And just to show you that I'm not just making this up, let's check out the highlight of his sit down with Mr. Psychopath himself, Jordan Peterson, and Mr. Woke Right himself, James Lindsay, just a couple days ago.
So Lucifer is the morning star, and he's the angel of the untrammeled intellect. That's how he's portrayed in Milton, right? And he's allied in some strange way with the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
If I might just interject, if he's the morning star, what do you do in the morning after the morning star rises? You wake up.
Right.
Woke.
Right.
Kids, you better never go to sleep, lest you wake up and become woke, like me and Dave Smith. Oh, God. I mean, it's sad. I'm embarrassed, I think. I'm embarrassed that I spoke so highly of James Lindsay in the past, only to see what he's become. What has become of you, James? Goodness gracious, man. It just bums me out. It bums me out. And I'll be honest, like, I watched that whole interview, that whole hour and a half or however long it was between James Lindsay and Jordan Peterson, two men that I used to respect a lot. It seems as if confirmation bias is feeding upon itself in a ravenous fashion. The way he perceives everything is that if he gets pushback, he's over the target. If he gets pushback from allies, he's over the target. If anybody comes to him in confidence, basically, and says, hey, dude, I think you're wrong about this, which I did countless times over the past year. As soon as he started this entire operation, I said, hey, man, let me just explain to you why I think you're wrong here and why you should narrow down the definition of the woke right, lest you encompass far too many people and you ultimately make it worthless. And he dismissed me. And he dismissed countless other people who all in good faith did the same thing. But because he gets ratioed on everything, he now perceives that. And I shit you not, you can watch the interview with with Jordan Peterson. He believes that every time he gets ratioed, it's because there's bot networks that are functioning against him. Like, this is like full schizophrenia breakdown. Everything that he gets dunked on for, he goes, knew it. Nailed it. 100% correct, as always, James. Just batting 1,000 over here. That's not the case, James. The reason that you're losing followers, the reason that you get ratioed on everything despite blocking everybody under the sun is because your ideas fucking suck right now. Because you're doing one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. You're trying to make it seem as if Pat Buchanan, of all people, has an impermissible worldview for the right wing, for the modern iteration of the populist right wing. Well, sorry, James. A former liberal was never going to be the leader of the right. It was not going to happen. That's the truth. And Pat Buchanan, along with Ron Paul, had demonstrated their prescience time and time again over decades. Whereas you wrote a bunch of papers and submitted them to prove how fucked up academia was, and you thought that gave you the credentials to be the leader of the right? Right there next to Donald Trump? What? No. Was never going to happen. And the pushback you're receiving is legitimate. And when Carl Benjamin, a.k.a. Sargon of Akkad, demolishes you over and over again, he's not doing that out of malice. He's actually a very nice person. He's doing it because you're fucking wrong, and you ought to listen to the critique that he's levying. And while you're at it, you ought to listen to mine. I tried to, in good faith, keep you from going down this path because I knew it would be destructive and I knew it would be divisive. And what I've concluded is that it's either your ego and narcissism that has gotten in the way of you realizing the error of your ways, or you're being paid as an operative to continue to perpetuate this unbelievably utter garbage argument. And at this point, I don't care which it is. You're wrong, and you've either lost your mind or you've sold your soul. Either way, I'll pray for you, bud. And I know as an atheist, you'll appreciate that. As you guys can tell, I took 2 full weeks off because I moved, and it took me over a week to move everything up here. And then it took me a full week to get the studio set up. Actually, it took me a little bit less than that, but I had to do some other things and get inspired and come up with, what I was going to talk about. So I'm back at it. If you enjoy the show, please do share it around. Hit the like button. Most importantly, pick up your relative's phone. Pick up your great-grandmother's phone, if she's still with you, and go to her podcatcher, because I'm sure your great-grandma listens to podcasts on the regular, and search Liberty Lockdown, click subscribe, and then auto-update, and just red pill the shit out of your GG. Red pill the fuck out of GG, bro. That's the way we grow this show. One great-grandma at a time. Do hit the like button. Leave a comment down below. As you guys know, I do read and oftentimes reply to them, but I do read all of them. And subscribe while you're at it. And last but not least, if you want to support my work, you could subscribe at Liberty Lock Pod on X. I'll follow you back over there, or libertylockdown.locals.com. I will try and get back to my regularly scheduled 2 to 3 episodes per week. I am seriously feel bad that I didn't put out a show for 2 weeks. And shout out to the dozens of you that DM'd me or texted me or whatever saying, hey, man, just making sure you're okay. I'm going through withdrawals. What the fuck's up? Well, now you know. And I told you at the end of the last episode I put out, I'm going to be off for a week at least. So it just happened to end up being 2 weeks. That's on me. That's the second week is my fault. First week, not so much. You should have been prepared for that. But second one, definitely on my shoulders. Anyways, I'll catch you guys soon. We're out of here.
Peace. It's not good for you. It's not good for the conflict. It's not good for the country. I just don't think any of racial collectivism always leads to bad places. I totally agree. You don't want to embrace that stuff. But if you're concerned about that, well, then the first thing you have to do is tell the truth.
Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. Please scan your barcode. Your liberty ain't gone, but yeah, it's on hold. Where did it come from and where did it go?